Hey folks, welcome back to Only Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about Shield of Thunder by David Gemmell, the second book in his Troy trilogy. Uh, his epic spin on history just continues with this book. I think, I don't know if it's maybe because I'm just so invested now, or if this book was just that much more gripping for me, but I actually enjoyed this even more than I did Lord of the Silver Bow, which was already a pretty high bar to beat. But what is Shield of Thunder about? Hector's marriage to Andromache is fast approaching, and all roads lead to Troy. Not only do the nearby monarchs, allies, and enemies alike come to the Golden City for the impending nuptials, so do fighters and folks seeking fame and fortune. With such a gathering of conflicting agendas and schemes, you can tell it's only a matter of time before things go south very fast. Yeah, and if you want proof that David Gemmell was just a master storyteller in his time, you don't need to look any further than this trilogy. Like the opener to this trilogy was a banger, and this book just escalates things in all the best way, and it does it in a pretty interesting way. So first and foremost, and I'm not even sure how well, I saw how it happened, but I'm still not even sure how he managed to do this. But David Gemmell managed to continue the overarching story from the first book, even as we follow three entirely new characters. The first of those, and these new characters have their own quests and objectives, often completely different from what we saw in the characters in the first book. The first and the most interesting of these new POVs to me was Pyria, who is this an escaped priestess who is essentially out on a search and rescue mission. And what's really cool about her story is that not only does she heavily intertwine into one of the previous POVs that we had, like she's deeply traumatized, and she has like a truly terrible backstory, but Gemmell just breathes life into her in a really incredible way that just feels so real. Like at the same time, as if that by itself is not enough of a hook, she just has this really engaging story arc over the course of the book that not just allows her to deal with what she's faced, but Gemmell also approaches it in a way that it ends up going not necessarily the direction that you would expect for this type of story. So like he gives her a interesting ending, and that just made it that much more enjoyable for me. And then the second, and you can't really talk about Pyria without talking about the second POV, Kaleides, who honestly for me wasn't really that interesting. I actually found him pretty boring overall. And honestly, that's really all I say about Kaleides. He was okay, he didn't really stand out for me, but he didn't detract from the story either. And then, probably the one who's going to be most people's favorite from this book is my guy Barnacles. He was just such a joy to read. Like this guy, if David Gemmell had consciously written an agent of chaos into this trilogy, he would have given Barnacles a run for his money with just the shenanigans that Barnacles gets up to over the course of this book, while he's just trying to live his life. Like he was just fun to read. He added not just a lot of comic relief, but also some of the most action-packed and exciting parts of the book was really involved him. Because that's the thing about this book. For the most part, it's I wouldn't necessarily call it a slow burn, but it's much slower compared to Lord of the Silver Bow. There are quite a few action scenes spread out here and there, but for the most part, it's very much about the character relationships, the character drama, the character development. It's about the politics, and it's about the scheming, and it's about the tension and the intrigue and all of these things that build up towards the games that are part of Hector and Andromache's marriage. So like this book, it kept things exciting, it kept the tension high, it kept the intensity up in a very different way from Lord of the Silver Bow, but in a way that was just as engaging, just as interesting, just as riveting as the first book, and often even more so. Because once again, with Barnacles on the scene, like things always get interesting. And that just goes, all of that just kind of goes to show like just the length and breadth of David Gemmell's skill where it comes to like crafting a story. Because like even though we have these three new POVs and we follow the story through their lives, we still get development, we still get arcs for the previous three from the first book. Like, their story is still very much present and very much part of the story. They're not, I would hesitate to even call them side characters. They're just deeply woven into the fabric of the story in many ways. Like it just works. The entire thing, it just really works how Gemmell pulls it off. And one thing, there is one particular detail about this book and this series in general that I really like, and it's the way that Gemmell handles the character of Odysseus. Like, we can tell right off the bat, like Gemmell made him the type of person that you cannot trust. You cannot trust what comes out of this guy's mouth. So the fact that in our real world, his account is the quote-unquote official history of this time period, it just allows Gemmell to take what should be a static time period and just go ham on it and just do whatever he wants. And that's exactly what you see happen. Like, even though you think you know how this story is going to play out, things happen often very differently. Outcomes are very different. Things break, things go sideways. Certain events don't have the result that we quote-unquote know as history. And it's all because of the fact that his version of Odysseus is just this. He's known as a liar king. He's known as a embellisher, storyteller of the. As a guy you just can't trust when it comes to the type of stories that he talks. So the fact that his accounting of this history deviates so much from what actually happens according to Gemmell, it just works. It works in all the best way possible. The best ways possible. It makes things. It takes what should be honestly a very boring concept and make it that much more engaging, because now that he gave himself this leeway through this rather interesting twist to the character of Odysseus, you never know how his story is going to play out. You don't know if things are going to happen the way that they happen in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Like, he gave himself that rope, and if there's one thing you can trust David Gemmell with, it's to take that rope and do something very interesting with it. And from all accounts of what I've heard, the third book in this trilogy is just even better than these two. So I'm fully expecting this trilogy to maintain its momentum for me when it comes to just my sheer enjoyment of what happens here. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about Shield of Thunder. A really banger of a middle book in a trilogy, and as everyone knows, the middle book is always the one that tends to suck the most. So I'm very excited to see what happens in this final book, how Gemmell brings it home. Unfortunately, I think he passed during the writing of the third book, and it was completed to some extent by his wife. But from everything I've heard so far, you can't tell. You like it. In many ways, that book is even better than these two. So I'm very excited to see how the story plays out. And if you were curious about David Gemmell, if you haven't tried him yet, if you want to pick up one of his books, I don't think you could pick a better starting place than this trilogy. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about Shield of Thunder. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.